This episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is brought to you by Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/galaxy and entering the promo code GALAXY.
Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 167 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Today on the show, we'll be discussing the new Syfy channel shows Killjoys and Dark Matter, both of which were just renewed for a second season. And this will involve spoilers for Season 1 of both shows, so just be aware of that. And I'm joined by two guests. So first up, we've got Andrew Liptak. He's the weekend editor of IO9, and he also co-edited the anthology War Stories, New Military Science Fiction. His reviews have appeared in Clark's World, Kirkus, Lightspeed, and Tor.com. And his article, Killjoys and Dark Matter Tried to Bring Fun Back to Space, Here's How to Do Better, recently appeared on IO9. So Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hello.
And also joining us today is Raphael Jordan. He's written 23 feature films that have premiered on video and cable television, including Lost Colony, The Legend of Roanoke, The Immortal Voyage of Captain Drake, Starrunners, and Vampire Nation. One of his films, Yeti, was the Syfy channel's highest-rated original program of 2008. So Raphael, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
And we have a sponsor for today's show, so that's very exciting. So today's show is sponsored by Casper Mattress. As a geek, you're probably annoyed that sometimes you have to stop using the internet, whether it's to go to the bathroom, give birth, or appear as the defendant. But thanks to Casper, mattress shopping is now one less thing that will tear you away from your computer. So if you need a new mattress for your home, apartment, or bomb shelter, just visit casper.com today. You won't have to interact with any puny humans, and the mattress will get shipped to you in a box that's the size of a mini fridge. Then all you have to do is open up the box, pull out the mattress, and watch as it naturally expands to its full size. It's sort of like Honey, I Blew Up the Kid except with a mattress instead of a kid. If you want to see how it works, just head on over to YouTube and type in Unboxing Casper Mattress. And while you're there, check out the raccoon stealing the cat food because that's just hilarious. Casper mattresses are made in the USA, and are so comfortable that if you get abducted by aliens in the middle of the night, you'll probably just sleep through the whole thing, and you can't put a price on that. But speaking of prices, it's $500 for a twin-size Casper mattress, and $950 for a king-sized one. You have 100 days to try it out, and if you decide not to keep it, they'll pick it up for free and give you a full refund. So if anyone out there needs a mattress, you should head on over to casper.com/galaxy and use the code GALAXY when you check out. You'll get a $50 discount, and Casper will know that sponsoring this show is a worthwhile thing to do, and that will help us to continue bringing you new episodes. So again, that's casper.com/galaxy. Okay, and so as I mentioned, today on the show we'll be discussing the new Syfy channel shows Killjoys and Dark Matter. If you haven't seen them, Killjoys is basically a show about bounty hunters in space, and Dark Matter is about a starship crew that wakes up from cryosleep with no memory of who they are. And since the characters in Dark Matter don't know their names, they just refer to each other as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, in the order they woke up. And now obviously I'm a big fan of these sorts of science fiction shows set in outer space, but it seems like we haven't had too many of these in recent years. I think Battlestar Galactica and Firefly were the last ones I really watched. So Andrew, what do you think about that? Do you agree that we've been in a drought with these space-based shows? Or are there some other more recent ones that I should have been watching?
Well, one of the really good ones I liked was Stargate Universe, which came out a couple of years ago, and then it only lasted for a couple seasons. But it was sort of the last hurrah of the Stargate franchise, which ran for a long time. But for the most part, there hasn't been a lot of space-based shows. Although I think Syfy's tried getting back into the game a little bit with Defiance, even though that's not really about space.
I haven't seen it. Does some of it take place in space, or what? How does it work?
It's basically a space opera. It takes place on Earth. It's what it's about is it takes place in this sort of post-apocalyptic Earth where a whole bunch of alien races have come down, escaping from their own star system. I don't remember exactly what happened in there's some reason why they left and they came to Earth, and there was a big war. The whole Earth was sort of half terraformed and changed, and now everybody's sort of trying to get along and sort of making their way. And it all takes place in this little town called Defiance, which was over old St. Louis. And they get up to random adventures. And I only saw the first season, and I haven't really gotten a chance to catch up on it, but it was interesting. It didn't quite catch my attention like Killjoys or Dark Matter did.
Well, I definitely feel like Defiance was the first step in the right direction for sci-fi after, like you said, several years of doing mostly, Earth-based sci-fi shows or non-sci-fi shows entirely. Because it's crazy to think that a decade ago between Sci-Fi Channel and other networks we had Farscape, Firefly, the Stargate, all the different incarnations of that, even Andromeda, the old Star Trek Enterprise. I mean, there was a lot. And then after Battlestar and Caprica, and then all of a sudden we just had nothing for a few years. And then so basically once Bill McGoldrick took over at Sci-Fi, I think he started shepherding in an attempt to get more back to space and science fiction. And Defiance was definitely a good first step. They also tried with Ascension last fall, which I really liked. I was kind of disappointed it didn't get greenlit to series, but it was a good miniseries.
Do you want to say a bit more about that? What happened in Ascension?
Ascension was, I think, Ascension is a hard one to rate, honestly, because I enjoyed it, but I also felt like it was a massive missed opportunity. I think it had the best premise of a series I've ever heard of. Basically, in the 50s or 60s, when the Cold War threat was looming, we sent a generational ship out into space to save humanity in case we all died, just to make sure someone survived. So basically, they're traveling to a nearby star system and it's going to take 100 years. And the show picks up 50 years into the journey. I think that's fantastic, so I was super amped to see it. And then the show is not exactly what you think. I'm not sure if I should go into spoilers or not. I mean, I guess it aired a while ago, but some people might still be enjoying it on Netflix. So I don't know. I mean, did you guys see it, either one of you?
I did.
So what'd you think, Andrew? I mean, am I wrong? Like, I kind of feel like it was entertaining, but at the same time, I felt a little deceived and disappointed.
I really liked the twist, and I don't know, I think we should spoil it, but...
Okay, sure.
So basically the twist is that they actually didn't go out to space. They were on Earth the whole time, and they're there, but they are there for a reason. They're sort of like an incubator for a larger test. And the first 3 episodes were actually sort of almost like 6 episodes. There's 3 really long episodes, and they had a lot of promise. The acting was pretty good. The set was fantastic, and they had a great sort of conspiracy vibe going. And then it ends. And they ended at about the halfway point, and they didn't quite get a lot further on. There's a really pretty nasty cliffhanger, and it just ends.
Oh man, yeah, that cliffhanger. Because here's the thing: it's like the evolution of while you're watching the show. You're thinking, well, they're in deep space, 50-year journey so far, great. Then all of a sudden you realize, wow, they're actually on Earth, and you're disappointed. But then that is interesting. Because then you're watching what's going on outside the ship as well as what's going on inside. And the show works on that level too. But then the cliffhanger is basically the girl does have some kind of interplanetary, interstellar transportation or teleportation power. Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I would kill to know where the show was going to go after that, but I guess we're never going to know.
Yeah, I really want to see what the end game was. And I just don't... I don't know what they were planning on doing. It sort of just ended, and I'm a little annoyed about that.
Yeah, it's like the last shot is the guy is on a different planet, and he has no idea how he got there, and just cuts to black. It's like, wow, okay.
Oh man. Well, let's talk about some shows that are going to 2 seasons, Killjoys and Dark Matter. So do you guys know anything about where these shows came from, like who developed them, how they came to be, anything like that?
Well, Killjoys came from another existing sci-fi show. I want to say Haven, but I don't think that's it. But there was an existing show with a bit of a franchise, and the showrunner there just took it over, basically created a whole new show, and that's where that one came from. I don't know where Dark Matter came from, although it's from the same people who did Stargate.
Right. Yeah, Joe Malazzi, Paul Mully. I like those guys a lot. I mean, I loved Stargate. It's probably one of my favorite franchises between the 3 shows.
I think
that was basically a comic book that they turned into.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't read the comic, but I think that was. It's weird because they're 2 shows about 2 crews on spaceships in this weird part of space, and they're not connected to one another, but they're both sort of running at the same time. So it was nice to see that just sort of double whammy right at once.
Absolutely. And I think it's just really nice, I mean, to have Sci-Fi Friday back,
Yes.
because like I said, a decade ago, you could watch Farscape, Stargate, Lex, even if you remember that one. It was great to just be able to tune in and see space shows on Friday night. And now we have that again. It is interesting, too, that like the two shows, like you said, they are completely apart, but they could cross over. I joked to David about that recently. I thought, you've got bounty hunters on one side and fugitives on the other. If they don't cross those over at some point, it's almost criminal.
I actually saw a lot of comments online from people who wanted to see them crossed over or merged somehow.
I mean, if Flash and Arrow can do it, I don't see why not.
Yeah,
and
they're from different companies though, so they're one's done by Space. I think the other one's done by Syfy. And they did talk recently after they were announced that they were doing a second season. The showrunner for Killjoys was saying that they chatted a little bit about it, but I don't think that was serious or anything. But it was maybe we'll do that someday. It would be cool if they would do it because
I think it actually could happen because Killjoys is a Space Channel production with Sci-Fi co-producing, and Dark Matter is made in association with Space Channel, so I think it could happen.
What I read was that Joseph Malazzi and Paul Mully, they originally conceived this as a TV show, but then they spent like 8 years or something trying to get it made, and it wasn't happening. And so then they did it as a graphic novel. And then, finally they got the TV show up and going. But so this graphic novel is out there. Has anyone read that or looked at or know anything about it?
No, I haven't.
I didn't actually read it. I was pretty confident at some point they were going to get the show made, so I guess I was holding off. Because it seemed like one of those situations like Oblivion, the movie, did the same thing. They put out a graphic novel, or they were going to, actually. I don't even think that one came out. But the whole point was basically the graphic novel was just to lead to the movie,
Right. I just wonder if that gives away what's going to happen in the show, or if I think maybe I heard that they're taking it in a different direction, but it'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. Andrew, I read your article recently about the recap of both seasons and how you felt. And I thought it was interesting. Like, for one thing, Killjoys is not as much of a space show as it thinks it is, at least not yet. It's mostly set on those planets. It's more of a Western, because you kind of compared Dark Matter as an analog to Firefly. But I guess I'd kind of looked at it as more like Killjoys was the Firefly, reboot, whereas like Dark Matter was more of a Farscape clone. I like both shows a lot for different reasons, but Dark Matter I think I prefer because it's actually really set in space, whereas the other one's more of a Western where they're just planet hopping,
Yeah. Catherine and I had quite a few. Catherine's my co-writer on the article that we wrote, and we were both trying to sort of figure out what to make of both shows because we'd both recapped them. And comparisons to Firefly are really tricky. That's what we found, I think, in my first recap of Killjoys. I basically said this is a show that Firefly fans have been waiting for, and about half the comments were about like, no, we want more Firefly, and the other half was like, yes, but this isn't nearly as good as that. So my comparison to Firefly is very specific. It's a show about a bunch of people on a spaceship. They've got a specific job that they're trying to do to get done, and they visit several different planets, and they sort of go on their way. The world is fairly run down. There's some larger governmental conspiracy stuff. So it's sort of my take on both shows is that Syfy went and said, all right, we want to do some more space shows. This is what people say that they've been liking, and this is what has been popular in the past. Let's take a little bit out of column A, a little bit out of column B, a lot out of column C, and shake it up and see what we get. And that's sort of what I've gotten with these ones. Dark Matter has some more Firefly cloned characters pulled out of it. Like 3 is clearly a Jane analog, and I think it's 6 is the sort of the Kaylee River type.
It's 5.
5, and that I'll get to that in a minute with the name.
Oh yeah, I have something to say about that too.
But it seems like they basically pulled a lot of stuff. Like this is, we want to make something that will be as popular as Firefly. And here's some of the things that people seem to like. So let's take it, and then over a little bit of time, maybe it'll become it'll be its own thing. So that I liked, because I like those types of TV shows. They're not what we call the ATV, like those really like high concepts, really story driven stuff. This is more of a small group of people going in space, and they're getting into weekly adventures. And I really like, and that's what I've really missed.
Well, absolutely, and I agree with you on a lot of those points. Like, for instance, I think not every series needs to emulate Battlestar. It doesn't have to win a
No.
Peabody. I mean, I love Battlestar, but I think my favorite show from that era was actually Stargate SG-1, you know, because it was just so fun, you know? Like, I'll take a fun show over a super serious melancholy show almost any day, you know? Yeah, I guess with Dark Matter, you kind of can draw whatever influence from it that you want to see. Like, because for me, it was a bunch of people on a ship that don't want to be there together. So I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of like Farscape, you know, so... But I think they both show a lot of potential. I would say my one criticism for both is that they're actually a little overly complicated. You know, I would be sitting here watching with my girlfriend, and we have to keep asking each other who and like what, and like, you know, because the backstories are so intricate, especially for Killjoys, almost too much so. But and as far as Dark Matter goes, they really need to ditch the number system. Like, I think that should have stopped after episode 2 or 3. It's like these guys have names now. We know the names. I mean, who's 4, who's 5, who's 6? Half the time I can't keep track.
Yeah, and the one real criticism we had with Dark Matter is that the cast has its good moments, but they are very bland and they're very stilted, and like I can't figure out. I mean, for the most part, I can't figure out which character is which half the time. So I just sort of just roll with it. A couple of them are easier to figure out, like 3, for example, stands right out because, you know, he's the Jane guy, and he's an asshole, and he likes to shoot things and names his guns and whatnot. Killjoys was a lot easier, just I think partially because there's just 3 of them, but they also were a lot better. They were developed a lot better. They all have very different backgrounds. They all have very different personalities. Whereas Dark Matter, I had trouble sort of picking some of them out. Like, one is, who's supposed to be like the face of the show, is really bland. Like, he's just bland. That's pretty much the word that comes to mind when I'm thinking about him.
Right, I agree with you guys. So the characters in Dark Matter, they're all sort of one-dimensional, that you can summarize their personality in just a couple words. But they did work with that as the show went on. Like 3, I thought I was going to hate, because I usually hate the characters like that who are just obnoxious all the time and they can't be reasoned with and they're just always being a pain in the ass. But I was really getting to like that character toward the end. He had this line about he's critiquing Charlotte's Web. That part was just cracking me up. And they softened him a little bit with his backstory. So
yeah,
I think the turning point for that character was the episode with his wife. You know, the woman in cryo. And, yeah, you saw some real emotion out of him at that point.
I have a theory about this with these types of shows, is that because they're very character-driven, you sort of have to go to some sort of archetype system. So you have to have your gun guy, you have to have the tech person, you have to have the leader. Shows like Stargate and Babylon 5 and even Farscape to an extent were their first seasons. It was really a lot about establishing the world and getting the characters sort of aligned up so that they could sort of work together. And you don't really get the meat of the show until you get into a couple more seasons. So if Killjoys and Dark Matter go beyond season 2, I'm guessing that they're going to get a lot better. And it'll just be because the cast is working together closely. It's because the writers are working together closely, and they're finally getting to maneuver them and get them to work together and to actually work as a team. And that's sort of what happened with Stargate, and that's the reason you stick with Stargate for 10 seasons, is because you love those characters. And I'm hoping that over the course of the next couple seasons, these shows will do the same thing.
Well, you make a great point. I think like a lot of those successful shows started off very slowly in terms of they were very episodic, adventure of the week kind of thing. And then over time became more serialized and delved into the mythology. I mean, Farscape in particular didn't really get going with that till season 2 or 3, and I think like these shows actually felt a little rushed, like trying to get too mythologized too quickly. Like Killjoys especially, I think could have dealt with just a few more random fun adventures before getting into the whole, Red 17, all that Klein business,
Yeah, I agree with you that Killjoys felt overly complicated too quickly. Often I was really confused where geographically they were, which planet they were on, or it seems like characters were hopping around all over the place.
Absolutely. I mean, Syfy.com has like a description of the universe the show is set in, and that's more informative than the actual show. I mean, I actually had to read it at one point just to figure out what everything was, because For instance, the Quad, if you just watch the show, you think it's 4 planets, but it's not. It's 1 planet and 3 moons. So I don't know, maybe I missed that, but I guess that's what the internet's good for.
When I was recapping the show, I would watch it twice. I'd watch it the first time to get it, just sort of get, enjoy it, and then take it in as for what it was. And the second time I'd be taking notes and writing stuff down. And I think that helped me quite a bit. But in those 10 episodes, they really packed a lot in. I mean, there's dialogue that exists only to drop information about the world, in a little bit more heavy-handed than most other space shows. And I think that's probably only because they were only given 10 episodes. Usually, like the Stargates and the Farscapes, those seasons were 22 episodes. They had a lot more time to sort of drag all that out.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, the showrunners have a dilemma, of course. I mean, you want to parcel out the information over seasons, but there's no guarantee of multiple seasons. You have to make sure it's, it hooks people right away, especially if you only have 10 episodes. You're right. I mean, Dark Matter had 13. Killjoys only had the 10.
But I think one thing that both shows have going for them is that they did work out a lot of stuff in advance. I mean, apparently for Killjoys, there's a really elaborate Bible sketching out the whole universe. And for Dark Matter, since they were working on it for so long, apparently they have they had written most of the scripts for the first season before they even started filming it. They have a really detailed 5-year plan. They had done the graphic novel. So I agree with you that if these shows go to multiple seasons, I think that the amount of preparation that they've put into it will start showing more and more.
Yeah, I think as they get into season 2, and maybe if they get a season 3 and so forth, they'll figure out what really works, and they'll get into a rhythm, and go from there. So I hope that they'll get to that point. I mean, even if each of these shows had only been a first season, I would have really enjoyed watching them. And I don't think I haven't quite seen the finale of Dark Matter yet, but Killjoys, I thought that the ending aside, I thought it would have been a good self-contained season up until the very end, and it would have been just fine. But as long as if it keeps going on and on, it will probably just get better.
And I actually thought both shows got better as they went. And the first couple episodes of Killjoys, I was really kind of on the fence, and it wasn't until they introduced the Red 17 subplot that kind of really engaged my interest. And Dark Matter, I thought, got really, really good in the last couple episodes. I guess, Andrew, you said you haven't seen the finale of that yet?
No, I have it on my iPad, and I've been trying to get to it, and it's one of those things I just have not gotten a chance to sit down and watch it.
I really thought it was effective. I was really on the edge of my seat for the finale of that.
I'm excited to watch, so.
Yeah, your partner over there at IO9, she reviewed it, and I agreed with most of her points. I mean, overall, very good season. I mean, I'll tell you this, one thing Dark Matter has going for it is a lot of really interesting sci-fi concepts. They had like the cloning teleportation technology, so you could essentially interact with someone light years away or whatever, but not be there. So that was cool.
And they also did some things with they had Android, which I think she was probably the best character in the whole show. I loved just seeing her on screen all the time, and just seeing her grow and become a character in and of herself. I think of all the characters, she was the best.
I kind of feel like that's probably the consensus, right? I mean, easily. Yeah, Android is the star of the show.
I mean, I really liked her as a character, but I confess I'm a little sick of the robot who wants to be a human thing. I kind of feel like that's sort of overdone. So I thought she was fine as a robot. I didn't need her to, talk so much about becoming more human.
Yeah.
Well, I did love that episode, though, where they activated the other android, the sex bot, and she started to get a little jealous. And
I felt so bad for her. She was cute.
Yeah.
It's like, you're jealous.
I agree. That was a highlight of the season. That was hilarious. But I think they could have done that without making her explicitly talk about how she's deviating from robot norms and becoming more human and that kind of stuff. It just feels overdone to me.
But at the same time, if they kept her as a robot, she'd just be boring. I mean, I think that robots exploring, what it means to be a sentient being, if she is indeed sentient, is an interesting concept. And I hope that I agree with you that it could be, it has been done before. I hope that they will avoid some of the typical stories and they'll do some interesting things with it. But
I guess it's one of those things where even though it's something we've seen many times, it's always fascinating. Because even this summer on AMC, I don't know if you guys watched that new show Humans, but I thought that was very well done. And I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, sure, it's kind of like Blade Runner and, Battlestar and anything else, but they're always interesting. It's all in the execution, right?
Yeah, and there's also Westworld coming up on HBO.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about you mentioned the temporary clones, though. I really, really liked that. And that was sort of like something out of Killing People by David Brin, I think was the first time I saw really that idea in science fiction. And I hadn't seen it on TV before, so I kind of give the show credit for breaking that. But I don't know, has that idea appeared on TV science fiction before? Or I couldn't
remember seeing that before. I thought it was pretty clever. And I also liked how they used it to show one's true face.
That was really well done. Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen it before. I know obviously cloning has been done before, and like replicating somebody has been done before, and I'm pretty sure Stargate has done it a half dozen times. You bring back the evil clone type person, but not as just a way of getting business done. And that was something that Catherine in our article had talked about, is that she can't understand how the world works. I can't either, because if you have the ability to cheaply send people across the galaxy by cloning them and having them walk around for you, why do you need spaceships? I mean, you could just load up all the cargo into an unmanned ship and just send it over, and then just get it cloned and walk out and unpack it.
I suppose that sort of touches on what you had talked about in one of your articles, or perhaps it was Catherine or both of you, that dark matter, compared to Killjoys anyway, is almost a little underdeveloped. Like, we know very little about the universe, but I guess that kind of works because these characters don't know a lot. Like, we're kind of going along with them and learning what they learn. So it's almost like Killjoys is overdeveloped and dark matter is underdeveloped.
I think they did say, though, in dark matter that this was new technology. So, I mean, maybe it would eventually supplant the spaceships, but it just, it's just brand new at this point.
Well, also, the catch with it is if your clone dies, the memories don't get transported back to you. So it's like it didn't work,
Right. But I agree with your broader point, Andrew, that the world, like the technology of the world doesn't feel like it holds together. When the robot, when he finds out that their entertainment robot is also a sex robot, he seems to like be completely unfamiliar with this idea. And it just seems like this would be a world where sex robots were just like everyone had one, or it was just completely normal, And it just seems like, the characters, they feel like 20th century people in this, and it doesn't seem like the culture has really been affected at all by the technology, the super advanced technology all around them.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of the super advanced technology, I'm still a little hazy on what exactly 2 is. I mean, she's not a robot, but she's a synthetic human, like a special powers human or something.
Yeah, I think she's a genetically engineered human with nanotechnology.
Yeah, and not born or anything. She was assembled out of parts. So I'm guessing that they just grew all of her organs in a lab and sort of put her together with nanites. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what the end game for that is.
It's like, to some degree, all these semantics get a little confusing because she's a synthetic human made from human parts, but on humans, the synthetics are just androids. Get what I'm saying?
I would bet that we'll get some interesting episodes with her and Android talking to one another. Maybe they'll revive the 2 people trapped in an airlock trope and have the 2 of them hash it out for an episode.
Are there any other sort of elements like that you liked? I wanted to mention in Killjoys, the things I really liked were the toxic rain, where they take the death row inmates and tie them up in the town square and then let it rain on them. And
the rain that also can drag a spaceship into orbit. Yeah, that got me really angry.
Okay, but I liked the melting
part was cool.
Prisoners part.
Gravity doesn't work like that.
I did think it was an effective punishment. That was a nice touch. You're right.
And also in that show, I also really liked the genetic bomb that somehow only kills people that it's been, genetically programmed to kill. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is, yeah. I mean, it's probably not realistic, but who the hell knows? I mean, it was definitely an interesting original concept and very effective.
Right. I think the fact that it looks like some sort of energy explosion makes it seem much more implausible. But if it was some sort of a cloud of nanotechnology or something, it might have felt a little bit more plausible to me.
Right. I mean, it was pretty gruesome, though. I mean, 1 minute, half the room is standing there, and the next minute they're all gone. Just a pile of ash or whatever. So it was cool.
What I really liked about Killjoys was the sort of the simmering lower class versus upper class conflict that was sort of brewing over the whole season. And I hope that they'll continue to do some stuff with that, because you have Westerly, which is really sort of the dumps of that quad system, and then you have the other planet that is really where everybody's trying to go to. So they tackled things like immigration, and they tackled things like wealth inequality, and with the acid rain burning the people alive, you just sort of see that there's a governance system and people who are in charge that have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and they have no idea what the impact of what they're doing is going to be on the regular people that ultimately support them. So
right.
The idea of a revolution brewing, and I think that we'll see more of it later on, is just really interesting storytelling. And that's sort of where the advantage to dumping all this stuff in the episodes when it comes to the world, when you dump all that information and you get a lot of I guess you can build stories like that really make a lot of sense in a single season.
Yeah. I mean, certainly so far, at least, Killjoys has a lot more. It's more of a social commentary allegory show. I mean, that's pretty clear.
See, Andrew, you were saying in your article that you thought it was confusing what the Killjoys mandate was exactly, that sometimes they seem like bounty hunters and sometimes they seem like spies and sometimes they seem like assassins. And
well, their job is pretty clear. I mean, from all the publicity material and when they go around saying the warrant is all. So at least for their D&D rank of 1 to 5, but after that, it's like you set up this organization that their job is to bounty hunt for you. All right, that's great. You can go and hire them. You can send them a PayPal thing, and they'll go and get somebody for you, and that's great. But then when you get into what seems like these upper levels of like 6 and 7 or whatever, that's a really drastic mission change for them, and you have them go from bounty hunting and delivering stuff and just picking up something and making sure it gets to the right place to whatever it is that they're doing. And it's either they're doing some weird genetic engineering stuff, they're doing some assassination stuff, they clearly call a lot of shots when it comes to the local government. They're who knows, I don't understand what they're doing and how that sort of fits in. Why do the bounty hunting thing if you can call the shots with the local government? It doesn't quite make sense to me.
Right, and I'm a little hazy too on the relationship between the RAC, which is the supervising company over the Killjoys, and the company, which seems to be in charge of everything. Like, does Klein work for the RAC and the company, or I mean, is he just like? I like that moment where he's like, she's like, "Who are you?" or "What are you?" and he's like, "On level 6."
Yeah, I don't think he doesn't work for the company. He works for he seems to work for the RAC, and the RAC is independent from the company. I mean, they made that clear a couple points, because they were talking about how the RAC is impartial, and they're a group that these other companies can hire out to do stuff. So yeah, that it's not entirely clear, and hopefully they'll have some explanation for whatever it is. I suspect that that's part of their end game, but it's a really weird. It just seems like it just sort of came out of left field.
I mean, one thing I wanted to mention that I thought was interesting is that neither of these shows have any alien characters. At least in Dark Matter, they mention the possibility of aliens. So presumably there are aliens in the universe, I guess, but I just thought it was interesting that there are no aliens on the ship or anything like that. I mean, what do you guys, is it just too much of a pain to do the makeup, or is there some other reason why they don't have aliens?
Yeah, makeup.
I guess it also just really changes the feel and dynamic of the show, or the scope of it once you start having aliens. I mean, because Farscape and Firefly are very different shows. And I think if you want to keep it grounded in any kind of semi-reality, like this could be our future in 300 years, it's better just to keep it to humans.
Yeah,
because it's also fascinating to see the problems we have here on Earth will only become amplified, and will still be the same problems if we spread out to different moons and planets. So there's a lot of great stories to be told even without having to go into aliens. So I kind of like that, because we do have Defiance there's more than enough aliens on that show. There's like 7 species.
And Firefly, which seems to be like the point of inspiration for these two shows, also was a human only world. And later this year, The Expanse will come out, and that one doesn't really have aliens in it. So that's maybe they're just sort of trying to set expectations for that.
It was interesting, actually. One of the commenters on one of your posts, Andrew, was speculating somewhat cynically that part of the reason these shows got made was so that they could reuse, I guess in this case, sort of preemptively reuse the props and things and some of the actors from The Expanse. Do you think that the fact that they're doing The Expanse had anything to do with these shows getting made?
I think that The Expanse is certainly one motivation for doing these shows. And my theory is that these Dark Matter and Killjoys came out this summer because The Expanse is coming out later this year, and they're basically getting the audience ready to watch space stuff again. So, these are very light shows. They're what we call BTV. The Expanse is going to be ATV. It's going to be really story driven. It's going to be really character driven. A lot of effects, and they're not using the same sets. The Expanse has its own set up in Toronto, and it's massive, and it's really its own thing. So I don't think that they're reusing stuff at all.
Right. And I think you're right, too, that The Expanse is definitely, like, these are kind of the appetizers, and they're hoping The Expanse is the next Battlestar, like a really well-received, well-reviewed, popular show.
Yeah, I think it will, too. I got a chance to visit the set of The Expanse back in March, and it is really impressive what they were doing with that. They were shooting on the same soundstage as Pacific Rim. The spaceship sets were phenomenal. The background, all the equipment that they're using, and the aero sets and all that, they were detailed, and they were really fantastic. On the other hand, Dark Matter pretty much uses one warehouse and one walkway and the cockpit. It seems like they don't have nearly the budget that The Expanse has.
You kind of just reminded me of something. Sometimes I'm watching Killjoys and they're supposedly in space, but it's clearly just some gigantic warehouse somewhere. And it's a cool set, but I'm thinking that this would not be on a spaceship.
Yeah. Well, Dark Matter had a couple of those moments too. They went on, actually, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dark Matter and Killjoys are using some of the same resources. I was joking with somebody that, at one point, I think that the writers were talking to one another because Dark Matter had an episode about space zombies or whatever, and then Killjoys had a pretty much identical article later on. So it was kind of funny to see that happen, that the two shows sort of converging in that way. And it seemed like they were using some of the same sets, like the same sort of warehouses. Dark Matter visited a giant space cargo ship at some point, I think, and it was basically just the inside of a warehouse, which is, you would make sense if you're just hauling a lot of cargo, but if you need a really quick set to use, why not just use an empty warehouse?
Right, and the actor who played Klein was also in one of the early episodes of Dark Matter.
Really? I missed that. I'll have to go back because I even thought to myself, the guy who plays Klein is very good. I had to go up and look up some of his credits, but I didn't realize that he was in Dark Matter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I didn't check it, but I'm almost sure it was the same guy. Although I was wrong I assumed that the guy who plays John was the kid who played the Iceman in the X-Men movies. But it's actually his identical twin brother. So got to check that stuff.
Yeah, what I really liked about Dark Matter, and a little bit with Killjoys, but Dark Matter got the chance to recycle some of the older Stargate actors. So. The lady, I don't remember names because it's been a while, but the lady who ran the Stargate Atlantis program,
Tori Higginson, yeah.
Yes, and then Amanda Tapping appeared. She directed an episode of Dark Matter early on, and then she appeared in Killjoys.
And
I'm pretty sure there's a couple of other people who were in the
David Hewlett.
Oh yes, that's right. And he should. Although watching 3, I thought that he should have been 3, and it was nice to see him actually appear later on because it seems like he was a character that was written for David Hewitt.
Right. It is cool that he's the handler. I hope we see more and more of him. So
yeah, he's really hilarious, and I always loved him in Stargate, and it's nice to see him come back for a fairly similar character. He does the Stargate smart guy pretty well.
I mean, one thing, Rafael, is I noticed is that this show is the Killjoys has a female showrunner, Michelle Lovretta. How common is that for science fiction shows to be created by and run by a woman? Because it seems like it's not super common.
I think it's becoming increasingly common. I mean, hopefully more so. You're right. Historically, it's probably been not the case, but she's doing an amazing job so far. And I guess in general, female showrunners don't often work in science fiction, but hopefully that'll become more common.
The guys behind The Expanse were talking on Twitter a while back, is that Variety had posted up an article saying like these are the worst shows coming out this year for women directors, and the Expanse was on there because they didn't have any women directors, and Ty Frank basically went to Twitter and said, look, we don't have any women, but we also went to a lot, and all of them turned us down because they were busy doing other things. So it's a little more complicated, I think, than just them not hiring it. It was great to see like Amanda Tapping getting behind the director's chair for one of the episodes. And it was also great to see, really women led the shows. I mean, Dutch is probably one of the best female characters I've seen recently. And two I really liked as well.
Absolutely. I think they're both they're great shows for women characters and, women behind the scenes. So
yeah. And to come to think of it, not Caucasian women either. They were women of color.
What did you guys think about the romance aspects? Because that didn't always work for me on these shows. I think, Andrew, maybe you said something similar in your review, but the scene in Killjoys where the doctor seduces the town mayor kind of guy, I really strained my plausibility.
That's what alcohol will do to you, I guess. But yeah, they were a little odd. Like in Dark Matter, it really didn't work at all. It was really, I don't know, I want to say dull, but it was really wooden, and it just didn't really work that well. Killjoys, you could tell there's that sexual tension between Davin and Dutch from pretty much day one, and they got to have their fun, and then Dav tries to kill her, and then they're a little bit strained, and then they sort of seem to get back together, and by the end, she's talking about how she'll do anything to save him. There wasn't as much emotional oomph to that. And I think that, again, this is a sort of a byproduct of only having 10 episodes. You really have to pack a lot in, and some of the character stuff really suffered as a result. And that was sort of one of them. I mean, I can believe them getting together. It's just that it didn't really mean anything because we weren't with them for that long.
I do think that's one area where Killjoys resonated a little better and rang more true, where basically, you have this effective love triangle to some degree because, like you said, Davin and Dutch, there was chemistry from the beginning. And even though she and John have just been friends for years, you have to think on some level he's, grown deeper feelings for her. So seeing his brother with her can't be easy,
I don't think so. I think that they were content to be just friends, and I actually really like seeing that type of relationship between characters. Like male and female characters don't have to fall in love with one another. They can be friends too, and I think that's a really good relationship to have. I think he was more annoyed that because he was going to have to choose between one of them, either his partner or his brother, and he didn't want to make that choice or have to make that choice.
Right. No, that's very true. Because, even if they're just friends and that's truly all he wants, he's still going to feel a level of, come on, Davin. Like there's plenty of other women out there. But I agree that Dark Matter didn't handle that nearly as well because right off the bat, we're kind of just shown 3 and 2 getting together, and 1 feels a little jealous, and then 1 and 2 get together, and it all happens so fast without any anticipation or buildup.
Yeah. Yeah, the one in Dark Matter came right out of left field and didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, the scene where you find out that 2 and 3 were sleeping together just seemed like a weird dream sequence or something. It really took me a while to accept that had actually happened because it just seemed so, like you said, out of left field.
Yeah.
I actually listened to an interview with the showrunner, Michelle Lovretta, where she was saying that her intention was for it to be a platonic relationship between John and Dutch, and that she felt like that kind of relationship was underrepresented on TV. And so that was one thing I did like about it, is that, it felt a little bit different from your standard love triangle. This like you're friends with someone and then your brother comes in and F's the whole thing up. But the scene actually where Davin kind of falls in love with Dutch for the first time, I think, is the scene where he first sees what a badass she is. She beats up a bunch of guys in a hallway and she's wearing this purple dress, and she kind of turns around and looks at him over her shoulder. And there was something really artful about that shot. And it was kind of in slow-mo, and
that was a great scene. That was the one where she took off the necklace, right? And used it.
Yeah, she takes off her necklace and tosses the beads before her, and they kind of open up into little crab robots.
Yeah.
That
was cool in and of itself. That was sort of the moment of like, this is just, they're just like throwing ideas into the concept art and the scripts, and just like, let's just have fun with this. Necklace that turns into crab robots, great. Let's just keep doing that. So I hope they keep doing stuff like that, just because it's fun.
Yeah, but I hope they have more shots like that, because I felt like that shot, and then there was the shot when John has been stabbed and he's recovering, and it's sort of panning past the emergency room where the people are standing over him a couple times. I felt like those shots really stood out to me as being artful and visually striking, and I felt like the rest of the show was, just kind of by the numbers, like sort of TV show editing. And I really would have liked to see them pump up the visuals more, like they did with Sense8, another show we talked about recently, but just like try to do more creative things with the visuals, because I thought that those two shots really stood out in that way.
Mm.
I think overall, Killjoys has done a really good job with the cinematography, and of course, we do spend a lot of time on Westerly, and that's kind of muted tones and kind of drab. But overall, I really enjoy when they go to a different place. There's a different color scheme. It's oftentimes like bright blue or light blue, and I don't know. I mean, I think it feels unique, and you get a sense for that world. I like it when a show has a very particular vibe from the visuals.
Yeah, that was actually one thing I really liked about Dark Matter, is that they went out to various planets, and it wasn't one of Vancouver's pine forests. Like in Stargate, it seems like every planet they go on, it's a pine forest. And
right, they would even joke about it.
It's a pine forest. And then this one, they went to a place that is it was a completely different forest. It was all maple trees, and it's like, oh, that looks actually kind of like what Vermont looks like, and it looks different. And there's certain connotations I take from it, that maybe it's a little colder or fall-like or whatever. And it definitely gave the world a very different feel. Now, just it could be this no planet is uniformly maple trees or whatever, but those areas that they're in, they're definitely making an effort to sort of show different things.
What did you guys think about the humor in this show? There was one line in Dark Matter that sort of stood out to me where Five says that she, what was it? She's going to watch Star Wars 36 or something.
Yes, that was a really funny line. It's funny too, because I remember back on Star Trek Enterprise, they would have movie night on the Enterprise, and I always thought to myself, would there really be movies still in the future, and once we start spreading out into space, or would they keep making new movies, or would they just keep watching the old ones? And Star Wars 36, I mean, I hope I'm still around to see it.
Or if you have the holodeck, would you still be watching movies, right? I mean, would it
right.
be like us watching silent movies or something that nobody really does today?
Well, and it's like on a deeper level, we create science fiction and space sci-fi because we're not able to go out there ourselves. And once we can explore the cosmos, you'd think we don't really need the fiction, but maybe we'd realize you're just on a spaceship and you want to watch a movie because it's Friday night.
Yeah. One of the Killjoys had, what I really liked about it is that it seems like every episode, John would have a couple of really hilarious lines, and I just checked IMDb, and unfortunately they haven't updated their quotes page, but there was a lot of, like, one of them was "Stop licking my partner," it just stuff like that. Like when delivered in the when you're watching it, and you see that it comes out really funny, even in the really serious situations. So I hope that they will continue that same level of humor and in future seasons. And even Dark Matter had its moments, not as many, but they definitely had them.
Most of the humor in Dark Matter seems to revolve around Android, probably.
Yeah.
And 3.
Yeah.
Which one was 3?
The obnoxious one.
Oh, exactly. That's right. Yes, I can't. Even though he's the most memorable character, I can't remember who any of them are.
I know that show. I actually feel stupid when I'm watching the show because they'll refer to a character by number, and I have to think about it for a second. I'm like, who are they talking about? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting slower.
I think it's a better mechanism in print, like, so for the comic book, I'm guessing that it makes a little bit more sense, but for the TV show, it really doesn't, and they need to get nicknames or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was really surprised once they find their files and they realize, their backstories, why they didn't just start adopting the names at that point, like Jace and Portia and all that.
Yeah.
Well, there's the moment where 2 says, "Call me 2, not Portia." Which you could see for her character. It would. I think I agree. It would have been better if some of the characters had just been like, "I'll call me by this name," or if they had just call me some other nickname or something. So there was a mix. So it wasn't just all 6 numbers, and you were constantly getting confused.
There's a point to that too, is that because they're also trying to be different people than their original characters. So in reality, for them, they really are 2 and 3 and 4. Even though it's hard for us to make it makes sense in universe, but as a mechanism for delivering information to the viewer, it's just a little annoying.
Right. But, you did just remind me, I think Dark Matter is a really great show because deep down it's like it does explore a more interesting central concept, I think, the question of identity, which, comes up a lot in science fiction and fiction in general. But are we just the sum of our experiences and memories, or is there like a deeper innate personality that, because essentially these characters have a blank slate, and are they destined to act like they were before, or can they start over? I think that's always fascinating.
I agree that that's a really interesting issue, but I feel like the show didn't particularly grapple with it. I mean, I feel like, and I liked how well plotted it was, but it was like every episode they're like, what's behind this door? Where'd this dead body come from? How are we going to survive this? That I feel like
the closest they got at times, we realized that 1 was there to kill 3. Basically, Jace was there to kill the annoying guy from some indiscretion in the past, but now in their new lives, they were friendly. So, little things like that, I guess.
I was a little surprised that they revealed who they were really early in the show. I thought that would have been the central mystery, is them trying to figure out who they are. And when it turns out that the show is not really about them trying to discover themselves, but trying to sort of reinvent themselves, I thought that was a little bit more interesting.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting, I listened to an interview with the showrunner, and he said that, at a certain point, it seems like all of them are, at first you think that there are all these hardened criminals, but then as it goes on, it seems like they're all actually not all that bad. But he says, no, you're misunderstanding. Like, to end up on this ship, they've all done horrible things. So believe me, you're going to find out more about them than just
that's always a really fine line to walk, when you're trying to make your heroes or protagonists anti-heroes or something. Because, even with the Chronicles of Riddick franchise, we're constantly told how terrible Riddick is, but he's kind of not so bad, and, even the whole fight evil with evil thing. Well, I don't really know if Riddick was ever evil, but he was just trying to survive. But yeah, it is interesting to see how it's going to play out.
But I thought it was effective. Like, when they have the characters do things that are unexpected, I found it really effective for that reason. I mean, with 4, there's the moment where he stabs his old tutor, which I found really shocking and effective. But then there's also the moment in 5's flashback where he allows her to stay. He's the deciding vote to allow her to stay on the ship. And you see sort of a softer side of him. And I thought the show could have had more moments like that for all the characters, where they reveal sort of more complex sides to their personalities than we had seen up to now.
Yeah,
sure. I really enjoyed that 2-part episode towards the end of the season where they worked with the other crew who inevitably turns on them. But then the second part is them reclaiming the ship. And, that was a great cliffhanger with 2 getting spaced and the reveal that she's enhanced. But I really found myself liking that other crew. Like, I even joked at one point, it would be interesting if they changed course at this point. We just started following these guys. Maybe like these other guys don't make it.
Well, right. Where there's the pair where he's like, are you brother and sister or what? And they're like, we don't like to define our relationship. That was like, they were kind of like non-stereotypical characters in a way that none of the characters in the base crew really are.
Right. And I suppose that's a victory for the writing when you create like these one-off characters that are so interesting. You want to see more of them. You're actually disappointed when they're killed off, because of course they had to be, but.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to ask you guys about is I posted on Facebook that I was watching these shows, and my cousin Ted Hand said that Killjoys is better than Firefly, and so is Dark Matter, #unpopular opinion. And then someone else posted, and Todd Ehrenfels posted and said, I very much agree, Ted. I just tend to be terrified of saying so. So I thought both these shows were plainly not as good as Firefly, but it's been a long time since I saw Firefly, so who knows. But I was just curious, do you guys know other people who thought these...
Firefly is revered, and rightfully so to a large degree, but this is where I'll delve into the unpopular opinion too. I think it is overrated. At the time, I wasn't enamored with it that much. Like, I remember watching it in real time, thinking about 2/3 of the episodes are pretty forgettable. But it was promising, and it was really well written in terms of the dialogue, because of course Joss Whedon. And then Serenity the movie was really good. but I didn't care for the series that much. I didn't think it was nearly as good as Farscape or some other things. So I think the fact it got cut down in its prime is almost like a rock star dying at 27. We never had the misfortune of seeing it grow old and lose steam. Like Heroes had it ended after one season, people would be like, "Oh man, Heroes was the best." But instead, people are like, "Oh God, Heroes, maybe this is reborn," because it went on too long, and they lost focus of what they were trying to do. I don't think Firefly is as great as it's made out to be, but it was pretty good. I think these shows are probably not quite as good as Firefly yet, but they're getting there.
I think Firefly, from my perspective, I think Firefly was a really great show. And I do completely agree, though. It was cut down in its prime. And I think people really read into how good it was at first and sort of extrapolate that, saying, oh, it would have only gotten better. It very well might have been. I have a theory that the shelf life for any given science fiction show is about 5 years. And then after that point, you really have to do something in order to get it to go beyond that point.
I think you're right. 4 to 5 years is ideal. That's why Ron Moore pulled the plug on Battlestar. Sci-Fi wanted more seasons. He's like, no, this is the story. We're done, Yeah.
Well, I think they also sort of had to figure out the ending for that one.
I totally agree with you there, Raphael, about the dialogue. I really think that the dialogue is what sets Firefly apart from these. I think that I feel like there are as many memorable lines. I can remember as many memorable lines from Firefly as I can from these shows, and these I just watched yesterday, and Firefly I watched years ago. But I feel like
Joss Whedon is a master of dialogue in the way that very few people are, so that's what really sets his shows apart, I think.
Yeah, but I feel like if Dark Matter had Firefly quality dialogue, I think it would plainly be a better show than Firefly. I can see that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've always liked. I think Firefly had the problem is that Firefly had a lot of stuff that it was setting up and never really got the chance to unveil. And I think I like what Firefly was doing a bit more. And this one again, it's the 10 episode cram. They really didn't get enough time to really do. They had to stuff everything into the 10 episodes, and I think that if they had let it air out and give it, tell the first season over 2 seasons or one proper season, it would have been a lot better. So I'm not ready to say that Killjoys or Dark Matter are better. I don't think they are at this point, but it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Yeah. Well, and if we're really, really lucky, when we get that Killjoys Dark Matter crossover, we'll also see the Serenity crew pop in for a minute, or at least fly by overhead like they did in Battlestar. That was a nice touch. Yeah.
I guess, Andrew, do you want to say anything else about what do you guys think is going to happen with space science fiction now? I mean, you mentioned we have The Expanse coming up. Are we looking at a new renaissance of space science fiction, or how do you think that's going to play out?
That I don't know. Clearly, we're going to have a couple more years of it because we have Killjoys and Dark Matter getting second seasons. The Expanse is coming, and that one hasn't officially been picked up for a second season, but the writing team is already working. So they're clearly anticipating it. I'll be very surprised if that one does not get another season, or if they can adapt the show as long as possible. So I think it's here to stay for at least for a little while, especially because you have films like Star Wars coming for at least the next 5 years. You're going to have a Star Wars film a year, so that'll keep people's attention sort of firmly focused on space stuff. And even outside of the entertainment industry, you have things like New Horizons exploring Pluto, and you have the Dawn spacecraft exploring Ceres. So you have this cultural focus on space stuff right now as it is. So I think that as long as we can sort of keep our attention there, we'll see some new stories that will pop up in the same places.
I think Andrew's completely right. Yeah, I mean, with the proliferation of social media and everything right now, the interest in space and science is as high as it's ever been. So I don't think that's really going to go away. I think the period where we didn't have space shows on the air was kind of an aberration, and just hopefully won't happen again. I mean, for my part, I tried to do something about it. I mean, like you mentioned, I had that sci-fi movie Starrunners, and that was written as a backdoor pilot, and Syfy was interested in doing a digital series to continue it and test the waters. So then we just never really got it going for various reasons, too boring to go into, but that was my goal. I was trying to do something about it.
And I think that another point to be made is that there is a lot of quality TV out there, and that television is really exploding as a medium. Space stuff is not replacing what Syfy had done in the past couple of years, because you have other shows on Syfy that are coming out, and you have other like fantasy shows that are coming out. So the Syfy channel is doing The Magicians, based on Lev Grossman's trilogy. You have the Shannara series coming out on MTV, of all places.
That looks really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read any of the books, but we'll see. And then you've got Game of Thrones is the big elephant in the room for that franchise. So space is not replacing other stuff. Where before it seems like we had space shows and then they were replaced by superheroes or urban fantasy or other things, which also seem to work pretty well for the Sci-Fi Channel. I think the Sci-Fi Channel just stopped innovating. They stopped really taking risks because they focused really like what will immediately get us ratings to get us bumped up into the to be a really premium channel. And while they were focused on that, they lost sight of the types of shows that like The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones showed that science fiction, speculative fiction TV could really succeed on TV. So those are shows that should have been on the Sci-Fi Channel, but they just either didn't have the infrastructure, money, or willingness to take the risk for it. So.
All right, cool. So Raphael, you mentioned that you did Starrunners. Are there any other kind of science fiction oriented projects you're working on, or any other projects you're working on that you want to let people know about?
Yeah, absolutely. Starrunners was one of about 24 movies I did for Syfy, and that was a really good period. There's a lot of fun stuff in there. But right now I've been trying to get some other personal projects off the ground. I just wrote this one script with this buddy of mine. It's kind of Behind Enemy Lines meets Starship Troopers, a sci-fi military thing, so it should be a lot of fun. Also working on this other project that you could basically pitch as Red Planet meets Reign of Fire, so that should be pretty cool too. I guess next up I've got an adaptation of Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea coming out. So, I guess that's about it. Other than that, just been working with some machinima guys, the Superpower Beatdown crew. If you don't watch those are a lot of fun. You should check it out. I worked on the Batman vs. Darth Vader one, and that was a lot of fun. The one thing I still really want to do, David, at some point is adapt your short, They Go Bump. That's still one of the best things I've read. I think that would be genius if we can get that going somehow, some way, someday. That'd be cool.
Is there any way our listeners could help make that happen?
You know what? I guess we're just going to have to shoot a trailer, crowdfund it. I don't know, but we got to get that made somehow. That's a great story, man.
Everyone's always said it would make a great movie, except for the fact that all the characters are invisible, but we can do it.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying to wrap my mind around that for like 5 years, but I think, there's probably a solution out there.
Okay, cool. And so, Andrew, do you have any other projects you want to mention? Any final words?
Well, I'm the weekend editor for IO9, so I sort of do some regular things there. Right now, I'm running a series on building stormtrooper armor, which has been a lot of fun to do, and it's keeping me on track. I write for Kirkus Reviews. I have a column on science fiction history that I've been writing for the past couple of years, and that's coming along nicely. I'm hoping to turn that into a book at some point. I think the only other real project I have in the works is I have a short story of mine is going to be turned into a audio podcast at some point in the near future from Starship Sofa.
All right, great. So, yes, we're all out of time, so I think we're going to have to wrap things up there. So we've been speaking with Andrew Liptak and Raphael Jordan. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to Andrew Liptak and Raphael Jordan for joining us on the show. Big thanks as well to Jason Pearson and Blurgish, who both just signed up this week to support us on Patreon. Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd prefer to make a one-time or fixed monthly contribution, you can do that via PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. And I'd like to give a special thank you to Oz Penguin in Australia, who just made a very generous contribution to the show. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank our sponsor for today's show, Casper Mattress. Remember that if you do decide to order a mattress, you should visit casper.com/galaxy and use the promo code GALAXY. Alright, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.